Yeah, I feel like foundations are here to stay. You will, most good companies, most good interviewers will still continue to test your foundations. So, in terms of like preparing for interviews, make sure you still revise your foundations.
Crawl, walk and run, like that fundamentals is very kind of basic thing, but it should stick, to people's mind that start from the basics.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're sharing all the tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits to make you the best data professional you can be. Today with us, we have two special guests, Nirmal and Karun. How are you both doing today?
Doing good.
Hey everyone, yeah, doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Amazing. Glad to have you both here. So, on our show, we typically start off by understanding people's origin stories. So, if you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career. Who wants to start off?
I can go first.
Okay.
All right. I grew up in a small town back in Nepal, born and raised there. Came to US in 2007. Been a while, I think. Like already 25 now. So, and yeah, I came here for my school to do my master's, and then after graduation, I think like I was looking for tech job, didn't work the way I wanted, and obviously everyone's journey is like that, right? So doesn't always uh, fall in the right place. But then I end up joining US military. I think back then there was a special program that was run by military for a certain time, and I was kind of lucky enough to get through. After I did 5 years in military, uh, that opened up more doors for me. And then my first data job was actually a data analyst, working for federal government. And then from there, I think I did 4 years with federal government as data analyst. And back then, I started, like kind of like creating or having that fascination towards the data itself. And I wanted to do kind of like a little bit more than analyst. And I went to school and do another master's in data science in UCST, and that kind of opened up the door for me where I am today. In fact, currently senior data scientist at Microsoft. So yeah, definitely looking back, it's been a journey. But yeah, that's where I am, and happy to be here chatting with you. And I'm going to talk about our book and fun stuff today. Looking forward.
Yes, I'm looking forward to getting into it. Thank you, Nirmal. How about you, Karun?
So yeah, I'm from originally from India, from a state called Kerala, and yeah, if you're from India, I guess you have like two main options: engineering or medicine when you grow up. And I went into engineering. I initially worked as a software development engineer. During that time, I got really lucky meeting a few mentors who wanted to start building out something in machine learning in the team that I was working at. And they were the ones who sort of introduced me to the world of data analytics and machine learning, and sort of sparked my curiosity, which led me to do my master's at CMU here in US. And there again, met a lot of interesting people who were in research, who were in the industry. Got the opportunity to work at Amazon for a while in few of their like research science teams, and finally was able to leverage all that experience and land a senior data science role at Walmart right now, helping to uh, primarily in Walmart e-commerce, sort of helping with item availability, item selection. A bunch of very large scale, very cool problems. So again, a bit of a traditional journey, I would say, with sort of like a side quest into machine learning, I guess.
Amazing. So we have two data scientists, one from Microsoft and one from Walmart, to talk to us here today about machine learning careers. So let's actually start off by defining what is a machine learning career? Like, what are your responsibilities? What problems do you like to solve, etc.? So, Nirmal, start us off, please.
Yeah, of course. Thanks. The machine learning career, I think it's kind of funny that the way the data science roles has evolved lately, and so it has taken many shape and forms. But in my opinion, there has been three careers that has been kind of like the strong pillar, and the fundamental hasn't changed much. Obviously, data analyst who does the analyst work, and then people doing the data science, and that one has, in my opinion, different subgroups within itself. So if someone says data scientist to me, uh, I get to ask like what kind of problems you work on, right? So if they are more into the product side, they're more into the ML side, they're more into the BI side, so there's many wings under the data science itself. So uh, we've been using the data scientist as I think, the overarching title to cover all of this. So, and when we specifically talk about the ML career, it actually falls within that one subsection of the data science title, in my opinion, and they will have a little bit more core focused on the ML projects, uh, building models, predictive models, and then building, time series forecasting, recommendation engine, I think, and you do a lot of different ML related projects where you apply different algorithms, solve the problems that way, right? So, and today I think we are actually heading towards the Gen AI side, which is kind of changing the title of ML engineer towards the AI engineers. And again, it's kind of going one level up. So I think, in my opinion, uh, it's always creates confusion in the market, in job market, when we have a lot of these different job titles. But specifically, if someone is looking into the ML section, they should focus on the core fundamentals of machine learning. How do you build models? And now I think the market is also demanding not only building but deploying, right? Putting in production.
Mhm.
So, and that's where I think the ML engineers or data scientists with ML focus comes in play. Uh, it depends on domain, like you mentioned before, right? How what kind of models you usually build. So because I'm in security, most of the models I build will be anomaly detection, behavior based, uh, predictive model, or even the uh, clustering, segmentation for compliance stuff like that. The core concepts may remain much overlapped, with multiple domains, but then uh, it actually depends on what area path you are in, right, career wise. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see how the security domain would be much different than another domain. So,
Yeah.
Karun, what domain are you in and what kind of models are you building?
Right now working in primarily the e-com domain. So e-com, I guess, is a bit broad. There's a couple of subdomains within it. I mostly focus a bit more on the logistics sort of supply chain side of it. So most of the models in and around my space would be large scale prediction models, forecasting models, just to make sure that uh, whenever you place an order, everything that goes on in the back end from to make sure that the order is fulfilled on time with no defects and without you requiring to make any contact with our customer care center. All of that happens as smoothly as possible. Essentially, what we call delivering a perfect order experience. So again. Sort of machine learning in that subdomain is pretty actually it can be split into a few different roles like Nirmal mentioned. There is like the data analyst who sort of help business make a lot of their high level decisions, the product data scientist who help a lot with A/B testing and causal experimentations, and then my role, which is a bit more building out models that are helping business drive decision making while it's being exposed to sort of like live traffic in terms of figuring out how to solution orders, figuring out how to deliver orders, a few things like that. So yeah, and in this space again, machine learning sort of is evolving with the advent of like Gen AI. A few of our projects is sort of seeing that injection of agentic frameworks to try and optimize the decisions we make. Yeah, definitely an evolving landscape.
Absolutely. And so while you're in the space of building the models, y'all mentioned that you're building the models and then you're putting those models into production. Are those also separate roles, or are those a combined role as well? Or I guess it would depend on the team and the company, probably.
Yes, definitely depends a bit on the team and the company. Like, for instance, when I worked at Dell, we didn't really have a lot of a mature ML's ecosystem. So everything from getting the data, storing the data, which is typically a data engineer's role, to doing all the analytics, dashboarding, which is data analytics, to building out the models and productionizing them, that would be on our team because it wasn't really mature at that time. With respect to Amazon, we had uh, they were called they weren't technically called ML engineers. They were just tagged as SDEs. They would sort of help scale the models just because of the scale that Amazon sees. You needed like SDEs who really understood designing and engineering at scale to help scale and maintain those models. At Walmart, it's again us who sort of maintains and productionizes the models, but it varies again, like you mentioned, between teams as also.
Absolutely. So it does sound like within that machine learning career can be expanded out into so many different, we'll call them tasks,
Mhm.
right, along that pipeline. What task is your favorite task to work on, and why? I'll start with Nirmal.
Yeah, I think in the pipeline, like you said, in the workflow, you might be engaged on many tasks, right? Surprisingly, now I'm kind of enjoying data engineering work, something that I used to hate in the past. I was like, I'm a data scientist, and give me the data that is kind of like almost aggregated, baked, and ready, and I build the model, right? So that used to be the mentality, but with time, uh, one of the things that changed on my thinking is uh, it's like how do you become self-sufficient, right, when it comes to the projects and all. The initial approach or the step is to have your proof of concept or the MVP ready as soon as possible, and that way you can showcase. And if you can showcase there is a value, there is going to be ROI, then I mean the leadership will be interested, and they can bring more people, they can bring more data engineers if you want in future. But initially, before even things kicked off, I think if I'm asking the help from data engineers, hey, they already have their own, you know, planned work items to do, take care, and they're not going to be always able to commit the time for you, right? So with that kind of like lesson in mind, I started learning a little bit more data engineering work myself, and putting the scheduled jobs in the pipeline, writing airflow scripts, and doing a lot of data engineering, at least not in the level of data engineer, but at least I can get some of the data rolling, and get my model. I can try things, right? So I think that's a very first step in the data science, right? You get the data, and then that's where the data engineering kind of comes in the picture. And now I think I kind of enjoy that. Like maybe that's because the other data science workflow I've done many times, and now that's like I'm understanding and complexity and everything that goes with the scale of the data you need to deal with. So yeah.
And part of that is the data cleaning, right? In that data engineering step.
Yeah, data cleaning, and you need to make sure some sort of validations checks, like because data might be scattered in many places. It's not kind of like a uh, in the real life. I think we don't have that XYZ their CSV file that can be or downloaded from the Kaggle, like
Yeah.
so and that's I think I a lot of times I tell my mentees and all too, right? Try to kind of like figure out a way that even if you're learning and doing a very simple project, even from Kaggle, instead of doing just upload and download of those files, host in somewhere like SQL Server. There's so many SQL Server free out there, and try to do the connections, try to read through the servers. I think that gives you a little bit of at least something than just like read CSV from the local. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work in the real life. You like, where's the file to read
Yeah,
from?
exactly. The
So
dirtier the data, the better you'll get at
yeah,
it.
a lot of time it goes in there, and I think, I mean, I don't want to take too much time to detail the conversation, but I think that's where I think the this automation agentic AI should play its bigger role to automate a lot of this pipeline work, and the work that we burn most of our cycle, and that way we can focus on actually modeling, right? So
Yeah,
we define the task, but obviously there will be human interception, but as long as we can take care of that, by that's when I think the real productivity of AI will happen, so in my opinion.
I agree. What about you, Karun? What's your favorite task in the workflow?
For me, I guess my answer is pretty straightforward, which is like the model experimentation one, which where you sort of have talked to business, you've sort of identified what you actually want to solve, you convert it into an ML formulation, and now you get a chance to sort of look through the literature and figure out how other people have solved it, and try out like different models. I feel like still it's sort of the space where you get to learn the most, and even like revise concepts. Like I guess recently had to build a feature attribution model. So most of the times my go-to on top of my head is SHAP. And yeah, recently got to dive a bit deeper into the topic. I finally understood the difference between Lime and SHAP, and and check out like a few other concepts like partial dependency plots and counterfactuals. And yeah, it's always interesting to get into that space of, okay, what model am I going to choose to solve this, and how am I going to explain to both my team in a technical manner and to the business in a way that they understand that this is the best choice at the moment based on whatever information we have, that this is the best design. So that is still, so to me, sort of like the phase I look forward to the most.
Yeah. You like being kind of that translator between the technical side and the business side?
Definitely, definitely, because they also, I feel like everybody has that curiosity to learn what this domain is. So if you're able to talk in a manner that really resonates with them, you can actually see them, see the sort of like that spark in their eyes also when they understand that, oh, this is how that model works. Oh, that's so cool. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's always nice. Yeah.
How do you adjust like, what is your approach for adjusting your message when you are talking to the technical side versus when you're talking to the business side?
So for the technical side, it's always about all the alternatives that were there, because it's there's no like perfect answer. It's just relatively good compared to the rest. So these are what everybody in the literature. This is what everybody has tried out thus far. This is what I'm going for. These are the pros and cons, and I feel like compared to the others' pros and cons, this works out well for us with like whatever architecture we have. So it's always about choosing the best of what's available. With business, it's more about um, talking to them from their uh, use case scenarios. So they have like, okay, this is the business case that the broad business case that we have in mind, and the model will be able to account for this business case in this way. And these are like some of the edge case scenarios where the model might go wrong. These are the guardrails that we have in place to make sure nothing too bad happens. And these are like some fallback options. And these are all the safety nets that we have, so that you're completely comfortable that whenever the model goes into production, you have these levers to make sure that you, as the business stakeholder, is still in control of the business, and this model just won't run wild. So it's a lot about that portion, I guess.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's one of the challenging thing I think in data science to be able to talk on both language, right? So the business and technical, and uh, that's I think very key skill, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I have a background in auditing, and I was a security auditor, so I also had that technical side and the business side of being that translator, and I thought that
Yeah.
was such a fun part of the job.
Yeah.
All right, so I think this is a good time to get into and share our fun bits that we have for the audience. So, y'all just launched a new book in the machine learning realm called Decoding Machine Learning Interviews, packed full of 100 examples of questions and answers that you might get during an interview. So, I want to talk about the book. What made you want to start the book? How are you promoting the book? And share some examples of some questions. I'm curious about that. Who came up with the idea to do the book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been seeing his post, so on the data science questions and like doing that kind of stuff. It kind of resonated with what I have been doing myself as well. And I was thinking like I had an idea of like writing a book about prepping like 100 questions for ML interviews. And then it's always better to have a co-author to, not because of lack of the questions, is ton of questions we kind of come up with and we had to filter, but it's because it brings the different thinking, right? So the different mindset, and like, okay, these topics, the same topics, if we both chime in and try to put a new ideas or new set of questions that we have come across. uh, I think the logic in the book is that we wanted to make sure that if someone is preparing for interviews in a short period of time, let's say 2 weeks to a week, and they already know some of the ML stuff, but they want a kind of like refresher to tap the most fundamentals and important things that they don't want to miss out. And that's why we kind of picked 100 will be the optimal number to cover all these topics, right? So we divided into different topics within the book, and yeah, so that was, I think, the idea kind of came out that of nowhere, because like I knew him from LinkedIn, like we connected to each other, and I'm like, let me reach out to him if he's interested, right? And he said, yeah, I think I was also thinking the similar way, and that's how it happened. So
That's great. So you said that the book's structured in different, I guess, types of topics.
right.
Karun, what are these different topics that you have structured the data into?
Sure. So we sort of looked at how ML interviews were being conducted, and we noticed that there were a few things that were table stakes. And one of the things that repeatedly came up in interviews was these ML foundational questions, which is your foundational theory of basic machine learning, your basic models like linear regression, Lewis regression, K-n and k-means, basic concepts, bias variance, overfitting, stuff like that. So we went through like a few sort of like websites that allow people who have had interviews to post their questions. And we talked to our mentees, like both Nirmal and I mentor as many folks as possible through TopMate. So they shared like their interview experiences, and we realized that this ML foundations is table stakes. You can't get it wrong. If you get it wrong, it sort of creates a bad impression on the interviewer that you aren't that solid with your foundations. So this is like the core thing that we need folks to get right. So the concepts again were like the basic models that came up in the form of questions again and again, about I think six models, and then a few concepts like bias variance, overfitting, and a few concepts in deep learning that again came up again and again in interview questions. So we put it all together in this book, and this should cover pretty much all the foundational questions that's going to get asked.
Amazing. What are some example questions or some of your favorite questions you added into the book?
Yeah, this is a good one. I think one of the thing before I jump into or give share one example, the thing that we focused on, and we had numerous conversations before we finalized the manuscript and everything, is we want to make sure that we cover the question not only from hey what works, but what if that concept doesn't work, or like if someone asks somebody about PCA, how PCA works. I have seen that a lot of the mentees, in my experience, when I kind of do the mock interviews or stuff, they only kind of focus on exactly what the algorithm does, how it works, right? And then if the interviewers, usually the interview process goes in kind of like a follow-ups, they try to, gauge them with the edge cases, they're like, okay, so in this particular scenario, PCA may not work. And then why is so? Can you explain or something? Or they can even say, what is the other variations of PCAs, right? And that kind of like sometimes creates that confusion to them, that they knew that they covered only surfacely, or like it's not by willingness, but that's all the information they were able to focus on and find online, right? So one of the idea was like, hey, let's not create one additional source of information in the internet. There's a ton, right? So right now the signal to noise ratio is a problem. It's not the having more books or information, right? So how do they distill it? How do we provide them to the best we can? What was the motive? And that's how I think that was the main our kind of like philosophy behind, you know uh, choosing the questions, uh, setting up the context when they are reading the book. I mean, that was one idea, to divide into these subtopics. Like we have like topics for stat and probabilities, then we go into logistic regression. So for example, all the questions are that can have corner cases and stuff in the logistic regression kind of falls into the same topic. So they are, when they are reading it or preparing it, they already thinking about how the question can revolve, or at least in their mind they have that pattern already set up, right? So when they're giving the interviews, I think if someone is kind of like asking question about logistic regression, and then uh, they flip it in different ways, they should be able to figure it out, right? So that was the goal. So yeah, I think that is the idea. So that's why we have some questions where kind of like I struggled in the past. So I just wanted to make sure that those questions are covered well. So yeah.
How deep do you go into the explanations of each
Okay.
of those topics or areas?
That's actually another thing that I kind of wanted to add, but thanks for bringing it up. Like we thought that like going surface wasn't enough, right? So then if someone is going too deep without enough context, that's also not good. So we try to find that sweet balance, like how deep they have to go. And in the interviews, I mean, they're not going to ask only one question, right? I mean, it's a general ML. Usually most of the times they cover the ML as a general topics, and they like to cover or test you in different topics. So they don't even expect to you to go, like if they ask about transformer, they don't need to know about the very inner dynamics of how transformer exactly works. But as long as you know, uh, not like in the surface level, like hey, it's a language model, encoder, decoder, but that's not enough, right? So you have to go a little bit down. So figuring that piece was a little tricky, but we make sure that based on our interview practice, in our interview uh, that we did, how much explanation is good enough, right? So we're not giving too much, we're not giving too less.
You
And
just
the
find that
key
right
thing,
balance.
yep, and the key thing that we tried to focus on, or from our interview experience, we realized was, the interviewer isn't necessarily looking for the math behind the models. What
Yes.
they're looking for is whether you understand how to apply it or not. So, for instance, like Nirmal mentioned in Transformers, there's the idea of positional encoding. You don't
Yes.
need to understand like the math behind it, but you need to understand why, what it does. So it's the idea that the position is important, and it's in you're encoding that information because it's important to the model. It's important to modeling that particular sentence or phrase. So more from an application standpoint, why certain models assumptions exist, or why certain model design exists. So we just try to cover that again from an application standpoint without touching too much on the math.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point about the math thing, and I always remember how uh, Andrew Ng, like his the best course out there today is still like 6 years or 7 years ago he teach, right? So every time he says, if you don't understand the math, it's okay,
Yeah.
and let's move on. The intuition part is extremely important, and that's where I think, like Karun mentioned, we try to focus on how can we intuitively explain and the same message that can be taken by candidates to express in the interviews, right? When they read our book, our focus or our mentality is like they should be able to digest it in such a way that now they have to explain it too,
Mhm.
right? So if they don't understand properly with intuition, it's hard for them to explain it. So we focus really less on math side because we can put all the equations there, but that doesn't do any justice to them, right? So
Yeah, that's a good approach. So, speaking of approaches, with the folks that are going to purchase this book, how do you recommend them to digest and learn the things that you have put into that book and to help them with their interviews?
Makes sense.
yeah, you
uh,
can go first. Yeah.
Sure. I think the initial chapters are really important in sort of setting up the basic foundations like stats and probability, bias variance. Then we sort of dive deep into a specific set of models. Almost all the models are frequently asked, but if in case your resume covers any specific model in particular, like if your resume has projects that sort of dive deep into regression, or if your resume is mostly focused on supervised classification or supervised models, then the chapters that would be relevant to you would be the ones like linear regression, Lewis regression. So you could possibly focus on those chapters. But again, these are sort of ML foundation questions. Interviewers sort of like to say that, okay, I'm just gonna ask you a few foundational questions, like 5 or 6, just answer as simply as possible, and they just sort of speed run through it. So you do want to make sure your foundations are solid, but if you're short on time, focus on the ones that you mention on your resume, because that's what you're going to get asked questions on.
That is a good approach.
Yeah. One thing I would probably add, he covered really well, but would be this book is not designed to give you the all the fundamentals that you need to start learning the ML. That's not the goal, right? You are already landing or you're preparing for interviews, hoping you'll land someday, right? Because when people are preparing, one thing I suggest people is you don't need to get interviewed to prepare for interviews. You should be probably mostly ready. And looking for someone who is in trying to get into ML track of data science, if they want to do some interview practice questions, right? That's kind of optimized. Uh, then this is where we are covering, right? So it's not for people like coming to understand all the concept from the zero up, right? I would think there is a prereq that you already know the fundamental concepts, but now we are trying to test you from different angles, like how this topic should be prepared for interviews, right? Knowing the thing, studying the thing is one thing, but for the interview now, what are the key nails to hit, right? So that's really important because interview is just one checkpoint, right? And sometimes it's funny that a lot of the things that you are tested on interview is not something you're going to apply in the work, right?
Mhm.
uh, 80-90% of the times you're not, but they still do it because it's a streamlined and standard process. It has been working for years because you need to have that litmus test that hey, someone needs to know all these fundamentals, whether or not they're going to build the all the models that we discuss in the book, right? They
Mhm.
might not be doing it, but in the interview they will test, of course.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're testing because they want to make sure these are the minimal concepts that a person should know, and they're testing not because that they expect you to use like linear regression, but they're just trying to see how you learn a concept.
Yes,
Like, are you learning it in a sound manner? Do you understand the model's assumptions, the pros, the cons, when to use it? So, do you have that sort of mind map in your head which you can use to understand any model going forward? So this is just a check on like linear regression, but it helps to make sure that you'll apply it anywhere.
absolutely.
That's really good to know. So it's not for like a entry level candidate. You should have a solid foundation of machine learning concepts, and then your book is there to then test those foundational concepts and build upon those in the case of an interview. That's perfect. I love that. Are your plans next to create a book maybe for the entry level as well?
Yeah, I think this book can serve for entry level as well, right? So
Okay.
what I meant earlier is that they need to have some sort of, like, like either they have done through the coursework, they have done the study, like at least some familiarity of the machine learning topics. If they
Hmm.
use this as the book to get the initial, the entry level ideas and topics in the ML, they can still get it, right? But I
Okay.
think, will that be enough? Maybe not. So what I was thinking, that the when I explained it, it was like, you think of our book as like, you already have a master list that you went through all the concepts. Yeah, either not preparation, but maybe through learning yourself, taking online courses, or whatever you have been doing to establish your data science career. Of course, someone has to go through either course or, training or something, right? So, or self study can also be another option. Then you are like, okay, now give me a cheat sheet, kind of like a reference guide that I need to prepare, right? So, and we are helping them that targeted study in a way, right? So
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
yeah.
That sounds fantastic. So, what did you both learn from this process of building and sharing out the book with others, and what are your plans next?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of learnings, right? Of course, about when the ideation happens. I want to write a book. It's kind of simple and uh, exciting, but then you're gonna have to dedicate time, accountability to yourself, things like that. That's another reason having a co-author and another person do it is better. So you are more disciplined. If I was doing it, maybe I still in the process of writing it. But yeah, and then definitely it kind of like let us learn various concepts, and it's continuous learning anyway. Sometimes some of the concepts I may have forgotten too, right? Like when I was just like going through those questions and trying to prepare the answer for that, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, it's been a while that I I looked at it, right? So it has been a really good refresher for ourselves, like when we did all that 100 questions. And another fascinating thing was, like, we had ton of questions. We probably have more than like 300 questions. Now our job was harder to make 100 out of that 300, right? So we did go through that process of how to pick the questions. It's not because your question is better than mine or mine is better than yours. We didn't even play that kind of like thing, right? We like, what is the missing gap, right? So as much as we can cover many areas, that was the key importance. In some of the subtopics his question is more, in some of the subtopic my question is maybe more. So it's just a matter of like, we wanted to give a best to the audience or the readers, right? So that was the uh, fun part. What's coming next? I think we've been chatting. Maybe different versions of this. It could go towards the ML system design side, or ML ops, kind of like combine that side, because now we covered all the fundamentals what someone needs for the ML to learn and build the model. Now how to deploy it. So that is what we are thinking. Let's see. But we will definitely collaborate more.
Definitely,
That's
definitely.
good to hear. And it sounds like with 300 questions kind of in the bank, you might have a version 2, maybe even a version 3 down the road.
Definitely possible, yeah.
Anything special that you learned, Karun?
For me, I guess the main thing was writing is a very hard communication format. For me, like most of the times when I'm explaining, I'm usually explaining, with somebody live. So you can sort of read their facial cues and you get like live feedback that, okay, this topic or this portion, I need to explain a bit better. I need to try at it again. Writing is very hard comparatively. So the first time I write first draft, I feel like, okay, yeah, this is a good explanation. 2 days later, when I revisit it, I realized that maybe because of expert blind spot, or maybe because I was writing in a flow state, I was like, okay, I didn't explain this good enough. I didn't even provide an example here. This needs to be explained better. So yeah, a lot of rewrites to the point that you start um, um, figuring out how to structure, not just structure the information, but try and take them through that information in a manner where they won't feel like they're missing a step. So
Mm-hmm.
that is, yeah, writing is definitely a very hard communication format. That was one thing I learned. And the other part is what else goes into developing a book, the marketing side, the collaborating on the design side, the figuring out how to get the word outside, which luckily for us, just because of our platforms, has been relatively easy. But what else goes into sort of selling, I guess, a product?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that term you used, expert blindness. I can totally see that in my own writing as well. So how do you get over that in the editing process besides just you two swapping and reading each other's? Was there any other involvement or editing involved there?
For me, just like breaks in between. So I write something and then I try and come back to it like 3 weeks later. I got that habit from like writing my SOPs when I was applying for masters. So I realized that, okay, SOP isn't something I leave on the day before I have to submit the application. I need to start writing it at least a few months before. So yeah, each time you write and you come back, you sort of read through the sentence, and it's like the information doesn't flow well, like that there is it doesn't move from one point to another well the second time you read it, and you feel like I could have structured this better. There is a miss here. These two sentences don't flow well into one another. So yeah, a lot of that you get when you just have a bit of break from your own writing for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the writing is not easy, and for the most part, I think we kind of forget how much we live in the digital world these days, right? So, and that's another part. Like we consume a lot, but we don't sit down and write, or that's another. Like when I first started creating content in LinkedIn, that was one of the sole motivation for me. Is like I want to at least put down my thoughts. So and like Karan mentioned, I think kind of like you don't get the final version. That's not going to come out in the first iteration, right? So you read the same concept that you explained, and I was amazed so many times that my understanding is different, because 2 days after I read it again, it has to kind of resonate the same concept for me if I'm explaining it properly, right? So uh, it kind of taking the breaks and tackling different topics also helps. I was just jumping from one topic to another. Like if I'm staying on same topic longer, then I might just be thinking a little too much on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I switch around too, so that also helped me.
Yeah, I can definitely see how easy it would be to go down a rabbit hole in that scenario for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the hard part is like it's like writing in that finding the balance. Again, it comes back to the same thing. Like don't explain it too much. Sometimes over explanation is also not good, right? So so it kind of sometimes creates confusion, and it's really hard, like, to exactly figure out, if I put this much content, will that be crystal clear, versus I'm just kind of like confusing them more.
Yep.
So
We don't want to do that.
I know we don't, right? And a lot of these concepts itself are kind of like tricky, right? So some of the fundamental straight up questions are easy, but and our sole focus was not only answering in a fundamental or straight up way, but those edge cases, the follow ups, if the interview is going to throw you the wrench, how to deal with it, right? So and for that, I think we also ourselves has to uh, wear the hat of like the reader or the interviewee. And now I have to probably go back, like, hey, if I was a new grad starting my career right now, and if this question comes, and again goes back to the expert blindness, like Karun mentioned, like, now I know everything, but does that mean that that they also, like, I have to kind of like lower my own like understanding bar, right? So when I write, so
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, what are your final thoughts or takeaways about machine learning, the book, or any words of encouragement that you have for the audience, for folks that are interested in the machine learning space?
From my side, I guess the question that I get the most is, are interviews gonna change with the whole agent wave, with the LLM wave? I feel foundations are still gonna be important. I feel good interviewers will still test your foundations just because it's the best way to know how well you understand a concept, like checking if you understand some kind of like large language model is not possible in a span of like maybe an hour, but checking if you understand linear regression well enough is definitely possible. So and it translates, if you understand this well enough, you'll take the pain to understand those large models well enough. So yeah, I feel like foundations are here to stay. You will most good companies, most good interviewers will still continue to test your foundations. So in terms of like preparing for interviews, make sure you still revise your foundations. And yeah, for those who are looking to get started in the field of machine learning, this is the best time to get started with tools like ChatGPT. Learning has become very like the learning curve is has quite a bit flattened out just because of how many solutions you have to explain concepts. So and to sort of unblock you when your code isn't working. Like the major pain that most machine learning experts had maybe up until like 2020 was that you don't understand why the model isn't learning anymore. But yeah, with the solutions you have nowadays, with the different tools you have to try out different techniques, it's become a lot more smoother process with not as many blocks. So it is like definitely one of the best times to get into the field.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll just add few things. You said it right. I think this is probably the best time to learn anything, right? So, as someone said, I still remember this. Like, hey, the people who are shy to ask questions, right? They now have ChatGPT, right? So they don't have to worry about, like, hey, is it how is that person going to feel about if I ask this question, right? So this kind of AI learning in the edtech, I think I do see a big value, because ultimately it's bringing and distilling all the information knowledge that's out there in such a way, probably more customizable and personalized way, and that's the best thing you can expect, right? uh, you can set up a session for your own interview prep. You use our book as a preparation guide, and if the concept that in the book itself you didn't understand, then ask, or try to find additional information, and even get back to us. We will be more than happy for the feedbacks. And I'm pretty sure, I won't say our book has 100% precision, right? So there is some of the things that we could have done better. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And like Karun said, fundamentals will not go away. Uh, that's why in one of our previous podcasts, someone asked me, "Hey, how future proof is your book?" As long as the fundamental stays, we are future proof. We're not like a coding. Uh, it's not a book in the tech coding or something that changes with the future versions, right? So the the fundamental key concept they test in the interviews are still the same, and I'm sure companies will continue testing it. Uh, so that's it. And then the randomization I see in the folks today is very much they always have this fear of missing out, kind of thing. Like the FOMO kicks in, and they're like, "Hey, I want to study this, I want to study this," and now you are almost like touching everything, but not making progress anywhere, right? So that needs to stop. You just have to have your own learning plan. Like, this is the topics I'm going to hit, I'm going to go a little bit deeper, I'm going to get expert in this. That in military, like our trainer used to tell us, like, crawl, walk and run, like that fundamentals is very kind of basic thing, but it should stick to people's mind, that start from the basics. Yeah.
Yes. I agree. The foundational skills are always going to be there, and that will help you incredibly in your career while interviewing, etc. So, thank you very much, Nirmal. Thank you, Karun, for coming and sharing all about your book and about machine learning careers. If any of the audience members have questions for you after they purchase your book, or just in general about anything, where can they find and or follow you?
We are in LinkedIn. I think that's
Yep.
the best place to find us and reach out. And then we have our LinkedIn URLs link on the book itself as well. If we are not connected, please connect. And we do share data science contents on a daily basis, both Karun and myself. So following us won't hurt you. And yeah, if there's any feedbacks, like I said, please send it back to us. And we didn't price the book really high. We just wanted to make sure that we target the people who can afford it, uh, and that was another decision we made collectively, like both in same coming on same consent. Is like, hey, let's try to make sure that new grads or the students should be able to pay it, right? Because if we look back in our own status, like right now, the market is a little tough, right? So we don't want to sell it in a high price. So I'm hoping the concepts we covered will definitely help. So uh, yeah, and thanks for having us. I'm really glad that we got to meet and do this podcast.
Oh, absolutely. It
Definitely.
was joy having both of you on. I'm sure your book will be wonderful for everyone that's going to use it. We'll share links to your LinkedIn accounts as well as a link to purchase the book in the show notes. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Data Podcast for Nerds. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want to transition your career and become a data professional, follow me on LinkedIn for even more tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits.